then I will go into Trinity.
Well, welcome, Paula Harris, to Basis 155. I've given you a dedicated number. This is the Basis Project, and I've been doing this as long as you've been, long as, well, a while. Let's put it that way. And we've seen each other at various conferences. I'm gonna say something. I saw you. I was with you at a conference in Europe, in Amsterdam. Obviously,
Well,
something not immediately in your memory, but that was a long time ago in Amsterdam. I think it was a Nexus conference.
yes, that was the Nexus conference because I brought to what's the name of the guy that runs Duncan
Yeah,
Rhodes.
Duncan Rhodes.
I brought him the what do you call it, the manuscript, the real manuscript of Colonel Corso, which is called The Dawn of a New Age, because the day after Roswell was not the real manuscript. It was rewritten by Bill Burns, and I think that she wanted to do that story, but she's a good friend. She came to, I
I
mean,
know it was.
she
It
came
was
to,
all. I'm just teasing, Paula. It's
yeah,
just going to
I,
show that we know each other from that period of time, and it was in
yeah,
Europe and a really fancy hotel called the Krasnopolski Hotel in the center of Amsterdam. And
I remember that.
where we are in Wiltshire, a lot of Dutch come over here and they enjoy the crop circle. So this is Silbury Hill behind me, and that's really in the heart of crop circle country. So speeding along, Paula, basically, how did you get into the whole UFO business? And then we'll get on to what you're doing now.
Well, going back to what you said, though, I invited Linda to Rome, and she's been in my apartment in Rome. And I gave her my bedroom, and we've spoken together. I used to live in Europe, Miles. I lived in Europe, in Rome, from 1994 to 2007 when I returned to the United States. And let me tell you, Miles, it was a lot easier working out of Europe than it is working here.
Wow.
Working here, I think the disclosure situation is closed down. I can't get very much done. And working out of Rome, Italy was easier for me. And then I could invite all my friends. I invited Jesse Marcel Jr., Richard Dolan, Ryan Wood, Linda Howe. I invited them to be with me in my
I
apartment,
I
which
can't
was
see how
summer.
any of those Americans who probably don't know what's east of Cuba would not want to go to Europe, particularly Italy, and maybe have some Italian wine and really enjoy the sun and the sights. I can't see why anybody would want to do a thing like that.
Why would they want to do a thing like that when it's already paid for? Anyway, the thing is that I got involved in this when I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I was teaching science fiction. I have a master's in education. I was teaching high school, and it gave me an emotional reaction. And so I ended up in Chicago, Illinois, with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, asking him if it was real. And I ended up in 1980 working with him as an assistant from 1980 to 86. Not in a million years did I ever imagine that I would end my career. And I told you I'm 79, with 5 years working with Jacques Vallée, who's also represented in the movie. So my destiny is the weirdest destiny in the world. It is working with the real scientists. So you know it's real. It's not a joke when you're working with an astronomer and a physicist and another astronomer like Jacques Vallée. And I've been very lucky because I've been able to collect data for 45 years. And now you got me at 45 years of data where I can put it on my own TV streaming show with a friend that you have, which is Thomas.
So tell us
And
all
he,
about that. This is a big deal.
yeah, because what happened was I used to, when I moved back to the United States, I started bringing the Europeans over at a conference that I used to sponsor called at Laughlin, Star Wars USA. In fact, I saw you there a couple of times because then I figured let me bring the Europeans over. Let me bring the South American contactees here so that this becomes international. Ufology is not an American phenomenon. Let's get
Oh my
over it.
God.
And,
Sorry,
that's the
sorry, Paula. I thought it was British because Nick Pope tells everything about everything, and it's of no defense significance. And he's over there telling you goddamn colonialists. This is a bad joke. All about the real deal. And we have our own Dulcie here. It's up the road on the M4, for God's sake. Anyway, go ahead.
it's British. It certainly isn't American. But the Americans have the most to lose to tell the truth and to do disclosure because, as Colonel Philip Corso told me, and I will talk about that because I did the Corso story. We started this off with, I was the journalist that got Colonel Philip Corso. It basically has to do with the military-industrial complex. And since they're making weapons and since they back engineered, starting in 1961, when Corso told me he briefed Robert Kennedy and he was working in the Pentagon. So of course Kennedy knew. And if you're back engineering all of this material like fiber optics and night screening devices and this and that, if you're doing that and so many years have passed, you're not going to about tell the American people, guess what? We've been back engineering technology since the crashes.
Well, I mean, on that subject, a friend of Werner von Braun, whose name Carol Rosen, is very worried about weaponization. I mean, is that something you want to mention about? I mean, all this UAP stuff flying around and in the current era here in January 2025.
Well, in my book, Connecting the Dots.
Yeah, tell us all about the book.
It has 23 interviews, and I interviewed Mr. Kirkland, whose father was working on a deep space platform in 1950. So let's not even look at weaponization. That's already happened. There's weapons in space already. I mean, if you're working on a deep space, and then you've got Gary McKinnon. He's not kidding. He's the best secret space program witness that ever was. And he was threatened, and I remember trying to fight the extradition of Gary McKinnon. So we have whistleblowers that are far greater than what's being given to us today. At the hearings where they go, oh yeah, we heard about a program. Here's Gary McKinnon with a list of outer space astronauts.
I mean, I think people don't understand the real. I mean, that was done at a dial-up modem. And half these security computers didn't even have proper passwords. I mean, it wasn't as if he broke in, if you see what I mean.
No, he didn't break in, but he gave us the truth. And he didn't ask for his own TV show. And he didn't ask for his own movie. In fact, it really scared me when I listened to his interview when he said that he was so scared he was thinking of committing suicide. I mean, this is a real whistleblower. The whistleblowers today want to be famous. They want to be on all the TV channels. They want their own show. They ask for money, and the one that's the biggest one right now has the Hollywood agent. So that's not Gary McKinnon. And so I as an investigative journalist, I'm not a ufologist. I will support the real whistleblowers that really worked on the projects, not the second-hand ones who come out and say, well, I heard about this,
Paula, that's a big deal.
The thing is, Miles, it's very dangerous. The real ones are very, they threaten their lives. They're not going to have their own TV show. And the thing is that I really think the disclosure began in 1979 when Dr. J. Allen Hynek, Jacques Vallée, Gordon Cooper, Stanton Friedman all went to the United Nations in the name of Grenada and asked that they look at the UFO question. And when you have a Gordon Cooper, an astronaut, with Hynek and Vallée, disclosure happened in 1979.
I think
and then it happened.
People don't really understand the significance of Gordon Cooper. There's a hell of a lot more behind that. But what happened? And look what happened to Grenada.
Yeah, because when they went there to do that, Grenada then, had a coup and they couldn't follow through with it. Serera Gary, they had a coup. But you have to study this, Miles. The people that are getting their information are getting it on podcasts, on YouTube, and all this. And what's so great about connecting the dots is I've got everybody in there from John Mack to Monsignor Balducci to Zachariah Sitchin to Edgar Mitchell, who was Apollo 14, to Jacques Vallée. I've got all of their word for word interviews. And so they're telling me the truth. I didn't make it up. It was done with audio tape. So it's question and answer. And so for me, I just translated this into Japanese. That this is a disclosure book. It's got everybody, and these things really did happen, including 1979, the 50th anniversary of Roswell. Colonel Carso was the biggest whistleblower and the greatest hero.
That's a lot of work, Paula. And now, is it,
Well,
in your? Are the Japanese receptive to this? They've always been ahead of the pulse. They've been out there at Area 51 all those years ago. And do you feel that they are more receptive to this information than maybe other people? I mean, to put a Japanese edition out, it's a big deal.
yeah, but I paid for it myself. I paid for everything myself. Nobody's ever sponsored me. And this is a problem for me in my old age. No, I paid for it. I paid for the translation myself, and I met with 6 Japanese journalists. The thing is this: the Japanese have money, so what do? They go to Billy Meyer and they buy his movies, they buy the metal, they buy everything, and they bring over Maurizio Cavallo, who's the only witness in Italy that gave me Polaroids of the beings. He was distant as Italy in his own country, but the Japanese bring him over. So the Japanese have a foundation of a history that we don't have here in the States. We're only 200 years old. They know from ancient alien stuff that we're being visited, okay? So they have a problem with it. Neither do the South Americans. The Aztec, the Maya, all the people that have indigenous stories of visitations think it's normal. Where it's not normal is here. It's not normal. ETs. Why don't they go back to the 1950s, which I've done extensive work on? And why don't they look at, and I'm going to get into it now, Trinity, which became a best-selling book. I was working on it for 5 years before Jacques Vallée called me and said, can I look at the piece of metal that the 9-year-old boy took from inside of the craft? Trinity is a bestseller. Trinity has Jacques' beautiful writing with my research. And of course, we're going to have a visitation after the atomic bomb. We opened up a Pandora's box.
So go into Trinity. I'm not to those who haven't said the book or read the book, explain further, please.
In 1945, Trinity, here's Trinity. It's been translated into 6 different languages, including Japanese. 1945, 2 little boys, Hispanic boys, were mending a fence. 1 month after the atomic bomb. And what happened was they saw a craft come in and crash right in front of them. It only had 1 panel missing, but it hit a radio tower. And we have pieces of the radio tower. And it landed in a spot where it made a circle, a 30-foot diameter circle, which is there. The boys waited 60 years before talking because the 9-year-old had gone inside and taken something off the wall of the craft, and he kept it. And the thing was this: it was 3 miles from the Owl Barn Cafe where Oppenheimer was, where he had his cabin. And it was 1 month after the atomic bomb. And when the little boys went up to the smoky part of the accident, they saw three little beings. And they had telepathic communication with them because the 6-year-old saw people falling out of a skyscraper. And he had never seen a skyscraper. They had never seen a UFO because this is 1945, 2 years before Roswell. So there was no UFO. There was no Kenneth Arnold. And here's an avocado-shaped craft 1 month after the atomic bomb that crashes. And then it takes the Army Air Force, the same kids that were involved with the kids, I call them because they were 20-year-olds who had a Jeep who were playing country music and didn't know what they were taking away. Took them a week, and the boys were watching the whole recovery. And the last day, the 9-year-old goes inside the craft and pulls a piece off the wall. So we have a piece, we have the exact location, and we have now one of the 4 witnesses who's still alive. So this is very important that people read this book because before Roswell, there was
extremely
a crash.
important, Paola.
And before Roswell, there was a crash. And this is what I went to get for you, Miles. This is a letter from Oppenheimer and Einstein to President Truman before Roswell. And it's called, and this is Einstein writing this letter, Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies. And it says we have a problem with UFOs. And it's a 6-page, and I want to send it to you. It's a 6-page letter to Truman saying, please, what do we do with these visitations? And it says, it has Einstein, Oppenheimer. Poor Oppenheimer would know too. He's 3 miles away from the crash site. You don't think the Army came to tell him there was something there happening? And then Ryan Wood, who is the greatest researcher. By the way, Ryan Wood has just written the first AI book about UFOs. But people need to really educate themselves. The whole book, he put all the information and asked AI questions and answers. It's called the AI Ufologist. But Ryan and Bob Wood were the greatest researchers. Bob died at 90 years old, but they were the MJ-12 people. This is an MJ-12 document I'm going to send you. And they did forensic analysis of this document because first of all, the word celestial is not English. It's Einstein's way of talking. And here's Einstein, Oppenheimer saying, we have UFOs, we have a problem here. Would you please, Truman, figure out what we do to communicate with these cultures? He called them cosmic cultures. So I'm going to send you the document. I realize it's before Roswell, so it has to be Trinity because that's not 1945. What crash are they talking about? You know, if it's not Trinity. And so please read Trinity because Jock has done an amazing job. The funny part about it, you can almost see a movie. When this thing crashed, it spit out 10 pounds of fiber optic. It looked like angel hair, all different colors, and the kids didn't know what it was.
Of
so
course.
They went home and they trimmed the Christmas trees with it. And they gave it to the neighbors because they didn't know what it was. It was all lit up and they didn't have electricity. So they put it all over the Christmas trees. And I interviewed a cousin that had this stuff in the house, Sabrina Padilla, it's in the book. She said, oh, we just trimmed the Christmas trees. It's so pretty, but the only problem is that when you would hold it, it would sting your hands. I mean, this is data. It's not hypothetical. This really happened. And so what I'd like you to do is share the Einstein-Oppenheimer document in that they knew in 1947, this is June of 1947. Of course, Roswell was July. It was Independence Day.
Can you read some more of that document while you have it? Some key paragraphs?
Yeah, I can. But I want to give it to you so somewhere, because it's going to be disseminated and I don't have the, I don't have the bandwidth and I don't have the following and I don't have, in fact, because I'm a woman, I've had all kinds of problems with my research. This is the world of men, as you very well know. You know,
Well,
so
I'm a big
it's this
supporter
relation.
of the divine feminine. So go ahead. Go ahead. Make my day.
So funny. Okay, relationships with extraterrestrial men presents no basically a new problem from the standpoint of international law, but the possibility of confronting intelligent beings that do not belong to the human race would bring up problems whose solution it is different to conceive. In principle, there is no difficulty in accepting the possibility of coming to an understanding with them and of establishing all kinds of relationships. The difficulty lies in trying to establish the principles on which these relationships should be based. And then he says, our United Nations can't do it. We've got to create a supra United Nations. So this is Einstein that's saying that. And he's saying, you know, how should we deal with these people? And he calls them people. He doesn't call them little gray aliens who abduct people. Because those three little beings, I think, what the boys saw were artificial intelligence. And that's what Colonel Corso told me. And by the way, I wrote a book called Conversations with Colonel Corso. And because Colonel Corso himself, this is the Italian version, had a meeting with an ET at White Sands. So that was the first interview Corso gave me. And because I thought it would make him look crazy, I didn't print it. I only wanted the back engineering stuff because for me as a journalist, it's really hard acceptance. So, so I told Colonel, I said, Colonel, I'm not going to print this. But when he died, we had to print it. And the being at White Sands in 1957 that talked to Corso, so these people are having, you know, contact all over the place, told Corso that the radar were interfering with the flights of the beings in New Mexico. And of course, they're not on vacation. If you saw the movie Oppenheimer, that opened up a whole new nuclear thing that we're having to deal with today, where we've gone back to the Cold War, Russia, America. You know, we are absolutely an insane species when we've been given so many messages and so many elements to turn this around.
Well, what about those nuclear weapons at bent borders and in the United States and Russia that were switched off by somebody?
Yeah, well, in 1969, and this was part of the Condon Committee report, at Maelstrom Air Force Base, and I interviewed, and you've probably seen him, Robert Salas, who was underground there, about the UFOs above ground that were shutting down the nuclear missiles pointed at Russia, and then with the nuclear, warheads, one by one by one by one. Later on, when I met Robert Salas, I said, "Did you feel anything when they were doing that?" And he said to me that he heard in his head the words, "We can shut you down." And he didn't say that in his initial interview, but he was at the citizen hearing in 2013 and told all of those people, there was a citizen hearing in Washington. This is why I say disclosures already
That was a
happened.
big deal.
And it had 36 military people, of which half were from Latin America, that were having problems with UFOs. Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, Chile, from Italy, and you had your people in England. I think you had Hesseline, you had, of course, Nick Pope. You had all those people.
Gary Hesseltine's broken ranks. He's really spilled the beans on a lot of the stuff at Rendlesham Forest, and it's not pretty.
No, it isn't, but somebody's watching. So, I mean, it's us. It's not, it's just somebody's watching all this insanity. It's not, I always, when people ask me, they say, well, are they good or bad? And I say, are humans good or bad? What it is what the situation is, and it should be looked at objectively and historically. because I'm talking 1945 with Trinity, okay? And this is on Amazon in 6 languages. And Colonel Corso speaking conversations with Colonel Corso. This is the Italian version, but I've written the book word for word what he told me. So he had contact, but he also worked under General Trudeau. And when he got the Roswell stuff, it was 1961. What happened to the Trinity stuff? Do you think they went and threw it in the garbage in 1945? They threw everything. They took the craft away. They threw everything in the trash. No, in 1945, we had the Army Air Force together. They didn't split up yet till 48. So why don't you ask the Air Force where this stuff went?
Well, this brings in Forrestal. I mean, the guy, he sort of had an accident by falling out of a window.
Well,
that was the creation of the U.S. Air Force, and when all the services came together. Is that right?
Yeah, well, they all knew. If Einstein and Oppenheimer were writing Truman, they all knew. And if Corso is talking to Robert Kennedy because they're in the intelligence community together, and I have the actual video of Corso telling us that. See, Colonel Corso couldn't speak in the United States because there was a lawsuit against the book. So I brought him to Italy for 2 years. So he was able to speak at San Marino, another independent republic that went to the United Nations, and Corso signed the paper. So the thing is that there has been disclosure before this. It's just that people aren't, looking at the history. There was 79 United Nations. There was the X conferences with Stephen Bassett in Washington, D.C. There was a citizen hearing in Washington, D.C. There's all of Stephen Greer's stuff. And that's where I went and helped Clifford Stone with his book. Clifford Stone came through and said, I worked on crash retrievals. 12 of them. First one in America, the last one in Georgia in America. 3 in between in Vietnam. And he was involved with Rendlesham. So the thing is this, we have had the whistleblowers. They're no longer with us. They died. Clifford died 2 years ago. They did it. Robert Dean did too. NATO, he was in Brussels. I have all Robert Dean's testimony where he's seeing the pictures of the UFOs, and we're almost going to have a third world war because the Russians think they're us, and we think that they're the Russians. This is serious stuff, and unfortunately, it's become a UFO Disneyland. It's like everybody just wants to talk about little gray aliens and stuff that's out there. But if you study this, starting from 1945, from the atomic bomb, and go down the line, the 1950s, Giant Rock, Adamski, which was real, and Van Tassel, Howard Menger, and all that, and go down to Betty and Marnie Hill in 1963 when it became an abduction thing, and then go to the government thing where it's the latest flavor of ice cream. Everybody that comes out of this third hand didn't even work on it like Corso did. Then we can see the history of this. And as a teacher and as a master of education, I've had to do a chronological timeline to see what the devil went on. And what I learned the most, Miles, if you ask me, my research in Latin America. I went to Colombia.
I've seen that we had a magazine here called Flying Saucer Review, and the editor of that was able to translate the South American Spanish cases, and they were always seen way, way detailed, incredible cases.
Well, yeah, because when the ETs left Southern California in the 1950s, with Van Tassel, Adamski, Orfeo Angelucci, and all those guys, and you have to study those guys, they figured, why stay here? All they care about is the technology. The governments care only about they don't care about the spiritual message. So they go down to the Chilca Desert in Peru with Sisto Paz Wells and his brother Charlie, whom I interviewed. And those guys were seeing the craft. The beings were inviting those guys. They were young guys at the time. They were in their 20s. Aboard the craft, and they were telling me where they came from and what the messages were. So I was in Peru, in the Chilca Desert. I was in the Atacama Desert in Chile. I was in Bogota, Colombia, and Tabio. I was in Argentina and spoke to 1,000 people. So, do the Latin Americans accept my research in the States? Yes, and they don't mind that I'm a woman. I'm able to find out more information in Latin America about the real beings, and they look like us. They are, they call them the Space Brothers. And we had that movement until the abduction stuff happened in '63 with Betty and Barney Hill. I've had to look at the fact that we have been contacted and they ended up in Latin America because it's normal down there. They don't think it's a big deal. They see UFOs. When I was in Argentina speaking, during the day, there was no airport around, there's no flight, and I was watching UFOs in the air, going right over in broad daylight. Any more sightings mean nothing to me. I've seen them in the Atacama Desert, in the Valley of the Moon. I've seen them all over. That means nothing to me. I have gone from that into what needs to happen to change this planet. Otherwise, we're back in the same old boat again. I've had to understand what this is about. And being with Jacques Vallée, we had long conversations on the raising of consciousness. So, and Grant Cameron. Let me tell you that Grant Cameron, for me, is the only researcher that went to the finish line with this. He's the greatest researcher ever, and it's all about consciousness. And the other person that I admire is Dr. Stephen Greer, because when he brings out his whistleblowers, they don't want their own TV show. These guys are afraid for their lives. And these guys that Greer brought out have been in programs where they're shooting down UFOs. And so, and he started with Disclosure Project and with Carol Ross and all those guys who were there. The air traffic controllers. You want to talk about whistleblowers? And that happened in 2000. What are we doing in 2024 with these one or two guys that come out of Washington? I don't even understand. Isn't anybody doing their homework?
When did it actually go from talking about people or other beings to alien? Was that a policy decision? At what point? And I'm also interested, how soon did Corso talk to Kennedy? And Kennedy, some people say Kennedy was shot because he was going to spill the beans on the UFO thing.
No, I think Kennedy was shot because he met with Khrushchev, and that's going to come out because they wanted to go to the moon together because nobody owns the moon, just like nobody owns Mars. Elon Musk doesn't own Mars, neither does China or anybody else. And somebody didn't like that idea. So how ironic. Now we have to go on Russian spaceships to get to space because we don't have any. Oh, it's so crazy. I can't believe it. So the secret about all this is coming together as one species. And the greatest, and try to get this quote, Edgar Mitchell, he's out in the middle of space and he's saying, I'm going to those congressmen by the shirt and say, will you tell me what the hell we're fighting about? There are no borders. And Edgar Mitchell is sweetheart. And by the way, Edgar Mitchell was born in Roswell. He was a good friend of mine. He tried so hard. He was at the X conferences in Washington, D.C., Apollo 14, walked on the moon. Great friend. Also, Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister with whom I spent a lot of time.
There's a lot of good names there.
Yeah, but like I spent my birthday with Paul Hellyer. He and his wife had balloons around my bedroom in his house. These are legitimate. These are legitimate whistleblowers who encourage. I remember Paul Hellyer said to his wife, I'm only going to do it one time. I'll say UFOs are as real as airplanes. And then he got hooked. All these people get obsessed and then they keep, disclosing. And I thought, wow, thank God for these heroes. These are the real heroes, not the ones who have their TV shows and a Hollywood agent and all this and all that. It's I thank God because I have them all in my Connecting the Dots book. But we have had so many courageous people, Miles. You know that because you do the BASES program, and you know that it could be right in your face and nobody's going to acknowledge it anyway. It's an individual search, it's an individual study. All my stuff right now is at Rice University in Houston. I've given them all the audio tape. I've given them all the photos. I've given them everything that I did.
How would people access that? Are they going to have that as an archive, a library archive?
Yes, it's called Archives of the Impossible. You can go to the library, and there's all of Jacques Vallée stuff, all of Whitley Strieber stuff, all of John Mack's stuff,
Now,
my
make it
stuff.
clear. How would they get access? Can they book it? Can they go online? Or how do they do it? Or do they have to physically turn up?
Right now, they're organizing it. I've been down there already one time. They're organizing it, so they have to digitalize it to put it online. But it's there. It's in Rice University where it belongs. It's in a university. This is a study. So it's there. By the way, can I mention, because you mentioned Rendlesham Forest?
Mention everything you want. Just keep talking. It's great.
Okay, I helped Steve LaPlume write his book. I think it's called From Rendlesham to Redemption. He's a very good friend of mine. And Steve was not taken seriously because, I don't know, because the other guys, I also helped Jim Peniston. That stuff really happened. And Steve LaPlume's book and everything that he told me is at Rice University also. And he was one of the 18-year-olds that was at the guard
I don't think
shack.
I've heard that name before. If you could explain a bit more about him.
He was actually, if you know Larry Warren, you can ask him about
I know
Steve.
Larry. Yeah.
Steve and Larry are very close. In fact, Larry came running into Steve's room after he had his experience, just frantic.
I mean, I've published a lot of stuff on Basis 3. It took me about 10 years to put it together. From the British investigator's point of view.
Yeah, but these guys, unfortunately, we debunk our own people, so there's all that infighting. It's ridiculous. But Steve was with Larry. I mean, Steve and Larry were good friends, but Steve was with his own, young guy that they were at the guard shack when the craft went right over his head and he saw the underbelly of the craft. The name of the book is From Rendlesham to Redemption, because in order to get out of the Air Force, Steve took a razor blade and cut himself up and made believe he was crazy. And then he went back to, because they were taking the guys underneath ground and giving them sodium pentothal and questioning them. Well, Steve was freaked out, so he took a razor blade and cut himself up to make it look like he was, going
That's
out
a
of
big
his
deal
mind.
to do.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love you to go. I don't know, do you have Amazon From Rendlesham to Redemption? Because you could, if I get Steve to talk to you, he would definitely do it.
Absolutely. I'd put it in with Basis 3.
Yeah, the thing is this, that he came to me as a legit, he had gone to other journalists. He came to me and he said, Paula, this is my story. And I said, give me the manuscript. I said, I'll try to edit it for you and we'll get this book out. We did. We got the book out. And this is, because that case is so very important, also for national security reasons. The case, you have to understand that whoever is out there, whether it be us from the future or whatever, like they told Peniston, is watching our insanity.
So just keep going. This is fascinating. You've got such an amazing repertoire. Hard work.
Well, yeah, because I talked to the guys. I mean, I didn't read a book or rehash. If I'm talking and I talked to Larry Warren too. I have him in my book. and Peniston, I helped him publish his book, and Burroughs. I was there with Peniston and Burroughs at a citizen hearing. So I'm talking to the real people, and the only way you can't go on a podcast and listen to secondhand everything. You've got to talk to the real people that were there. And that's what I would do. And I didn't have any preconceived notion, Miles, because I don't know what's going on. So I didn't lead them. I just said, like you, and you're good. I just questioned them. I said, oh, yeah, tell me where you were and how did you feel and all that. Then I just printed their words. I did not interpret them. I don't have any idea what's going on. Well, did you know that I also did the Dan Burrish case? And that blew me out of the water. Dan Burrish, microbiologist, S4, working with a J-Rod, talking about time travel. That drove me nuts. And in order for me to meet with Burrish, I had to go to a casino in the middle of the desert in Nevada 3 times, because the first 2 times I couldn't deal with it. I didn't believe him. The 3rd time he started to cry, and he really trusted me, and I did the story. The Dan Burrish story is in one of my books. So, it's so bizarre. It's worse than science fiction, and it's hard for me. But I have to go to the actual person that worked in S4. And Bob Lazar worked at S4, Dan Burrish worked at S4, and Michael Wolff-Cruvat, who I'm the only journalist that did that story, worked at S4. He cloned a soldier in 1972, so go there with your mind. All right. So the thing is this, that I have to compile the data, the stuff from the real people. And I don't, and you don't see me all over TV and all. I don't need my own TV show. I don't need to do that. What I need is for people to study this like an academic subject,
yes,
and come to their conclusion because they have the real source material. I mean, I've read such crappy stuff on social media. I don't even answer. I've seen podcasts that are ridiculous because they don't go to the original person, or the people they're going to are media stars. So it just, a Clifford Stone, my God.
As John Lear mentioned, he called it UFO disease. The late John Lear.
Well, what it is, it's interesting, and some people find their way through fame and fortune through it. It doesn't pay anything. Everything I ever made with teaching subsidized my trip to Latin America. Who you think paid for the hotels, the airfare, and for me to go to Latin America? But I had to go because if in 1972, Space Brothers are walking off a spaceship and talking to 10 young boys in Peru, I got to know why and what they said. I got to know. So everybody says, why do you do it? Well, I came back. It's in my book, All of the Above and Beyond. I put it in the book, but it didn't make a movie. I didn't do all kinds of stuff with it. But it's there. It's what they told me happened. But I also had to go to the location. I said, show me where it happened. I got to know where it happened. And then I stand there and I go, oh my God, 1973, the ship landed here. Even J.J. Benitez, who's a big journalist in Spain, if you've ever heard of him, was involved in these cases in Peru. And he wrote books in Spain. It's the U.S. They start educating people about the stuff. And they read it like history. In the U.S., it's like the latest flavor of ice cream. It's like, it's a TV show. It's crazy. And yes, I have done 45 years of work, and it's been really difficult as a woman dealing with.
Well, I think we're in more elevated times, Paola. No.
Now look at the conferences.
I have to say, you have a very, very big point there. And without slinging mud or anything, But it's been wonderful to go to the International Congress. It's a big deal for me. It was a week long, and it's a big trip from little old England to go there. Tell us more about your conferences, and is the media still available? Can we still see those conferences anywhere?
Yes, on my TV channel.
Now tell us all about that and who's involved with doing that. I want to know. I want to know. Tell us.
He's involved with doing that. But, Thomas is involved with doing that. And he knows what I do. So he says, give me everything. So if you go to my TV channel, Miles, you'll see Colonel Corso sitting
And what
in a
is your TV channel? Tell us all about it. Names. I want names. Paul, you must tell me the name.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at, it's basically the same TV channel you got. The same TV. I think it's for Paola Harris Ufology. And it's, if you could put the click on the bottom, you said you could add things.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. I'll go and talk to Thomas. I'll tell Thomas, give me that right now.
Okay, you will see Colonel Corso sitting in a hotel like this in Rome, talking about Robert Kennedy, talking about how he briefed him, talking about what he had in his hand. That he had.
The context of this, just from a date standpoint, if you're recording this on the 24th of January 2025, and there's some guy just taken over at the White House, and he said he's going to release all this stuff on Kennedy. Do you think anything on that will happen?
No. And the reason
I don't want to mention any names. It might get upset some people.
No, but just understand that Colonel Corso wrote 3 books. The Day After Rome, which is the inception of the CIA, and he goes after Jesse Jesus Angleton, the creator of the CIA at that time, that was under Kennedy, that Kennedy asked him for the files, and that Michael Wolff interacted with. That's The Day After Rome. The Day After Roswell, which became a bestseller after the colonel died, after the lawsuit was done.
Now, exactly what was the lawsuit? Explain that detail, just so that people understand.
The colonel never received any money from bestseller Simon and Schuster because there was a problem with and I'm not going to mention him, with the co-writer. In fact, Colonel, before he died, said, "I'm sorry I ever wrote the book." He said, because he said there's a bunch of vultures out there. But because I was able to see him in 1997, had the room next to him in Roswell when the book was released, I brought him to Italy so he could tell the truth. So he spoke at a major conference with Robert Dean, Carlos Diaz, Wendell Stevens in Italy. And he spoke at San Marino, where we tried to open it up with the United Nations. And who was there? Who was in San Marino in 1998? Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, Yvonne Smith, Michael Heseman, Michael Lindemann, Jim Karan. All these people were with him. Boris Chernoff from Russia, Messan from Belgium, and I was there. So, and I was under the colonel's arm. I was his bodyguard in that. So all of this stuff, if you want to see the colonel talking one-on-one, I'd rather that the people talk. If you want to see Clifford Stone talk, it's on my TV channel in video form. And if you want to see a panel on artificial intelligence with Jacques Vallée, Paul Smith, Adam Curry, and Paul Hynek, it's on my television channel.
Those are big hitters.
AI, on artificial intelligence, which everybody should be talking about right now. And it's on my television channel.
Now, how long ago was that? The last
2 months. The last 2 months, Miles. That's why I don't understand why people don't go to the source. I uploaded all these videos with Thomas. It's all there. It's all their testimony. It's not Paula, because Paula just reports it. And they need to go to the source. They need to see these people talking about these things. And what I collected for information, even the Latin American stuff, which I'm going to upload. It's the people themselves talking. So what it is you go to the source. So help me with the TV channel, because that's all I have to give. That's all I have to give to the world is what I did, and they can watch it from the source. They don't have to go to secondhand anybody. So yeah, and you can ask me anything you want, anytime you want about this.
And of course, the material, your audio tape stuff, is that the raw interviews you did? Is that right?
Yeah, that I gave to Rice University. The only audio I have that I could share with you guys is daughter of Kenneth Arnold, Kim Arnold. I was the only journalist that got to her. There's nobody from that family. You know, he coined the term 1947 flying saucers. And what I didn't know when I questioned her was that her mother was a psychic medium. So the ETs are picking a pilot to watch these 9 craft over Mount Rainier, whose wife is a psychic medium. So a lot of this is about messaging. It's a lot about a message. Messaging. It's not just sighting. It's like, what does it mean? Like, I've seen so many UFOs anymore, especially with Stephen Greer, because he really, by the way, Stephen Greer did have a meeting in France. I have all the paperwork around it with the French military under Sarkozy in Paris, where he did call down a UFO and they all saw it. He told them not to get up. If it happened, the UFO came down on the chateau of Messier de Ben, who gave his land, and then all these guys go running towards it and just dissipates right in front of them. I have all that testimony. So when he's saying he did a CE5 for the G8 or for military, he's telling the truth. I have all the documentation of it. So can he do this? Yes. He did it for them. Now, Paul Howley
When was that? When did that happen?
If you want the documentation, I can send it to you.
I think it's very important. What year?
2010, like in 2010. I think it was, I have to go look because I have all the paperwork from the guy whose property it was on. The guy whose property was on Messier, he wrote me and said, here's all the photos of what happened, Paula. And it was my property. I lent my property to the French military. So I've got all this stuff.
I think you have got some good stuff.
And I'm about to mail it to Rice, but if you want a copy of it, I'll definitely.
I would like to see that. Anything that can be done to push this forward.
Yeah, because these things have happened. These all our eyes are on Washington. You have to remember one thing, that Colonel Corso told me to stop talking about government, he said, because which one are you talking about? Because they change every 4 years. So you can't use the word government. Who's micromanaging this is a group of select people. And it's like the MJ-12 guys and the military industrial complex that has more to gain from the technology. It's not government. Your government knows nothing. I mean, the representatives.
Yeah, I think it's crucial there. It's not governments of the day. It's industrial secrets. I've always said, if you want to get some hard data, don't ask the Ministry of Defense, ask the Ministry of Trade and Industry. They'll know what's going on.
Yeah, and ask Lockheed Martin, where the guy dies and he says, we have the technology to bring ET home. And you know, what's his name? I forgot the name of the head of Lockheed Martin. I mean, what more do you need? He said, we have ET technology before he died. The Skunk Works guy, Ben Rich.
Yeah.
Go look Ben Rich quotes. The head of the Skunk Works. What else do you want? Do you think disclosure has to happen? Of course. He just said it. We have the technology to bring ET home because we had it in the first place. Because when you have crashes, and by the way, there's a book if people read called Majestic Eyes Only, of 104 crashes written by Ryan Wood. And by the way, 1945 crash was in there. That's how I found it. There are two people that wrote about Trinity. Ryan Wood in that book, Magic Eyes Only, and the greatest, Timothy Good, who is one of the
Yes.
greatest. Timothy Good and Wendell Stevens were the greatest researchers who ever lived.
Yes, a very decent and good man, and I think they got to him in 20. There was a conference in in Amsterdam, and I think he was very lucid before that, and I think they maybe slipped him a Mickey Finn, and it was there was a anyway we don't talk about it. He was been on some very good documentaries, Channel 4 here in the UK, the Great UFO Mystery, I think, conspiracy, where they discovered there wasn't a conspiracy, but there is a conspiracy.
Oh, no, Timothy Good is the best of the best, and you better read his books because
Yeah.
they're real. And he went to see the 6-year-old Remy Baca. He physically went there. That's why I admire these two people. You can't do it on the phone. I don't care who you are. He physically went to Gig Harbor, Washington, question the 6-year-old. It's in his book, Earth and Alien Enterprise. Now, when I mention a book, I'm reading. I had a library of 300 books. I've read Linda Howe's book. I've read Bud Hopkins' book. I've read everybody's book. How in the world are you going to put together a puzzle unless you read everybody's book?
Exactly. So where
What?
we've where do you want to finally to summarize the Paula? It's Paula or Paula?
Paula, just call me
Just
Paula,
Paula.
because it's Paula. I don't want to be called Paola, so it's okay. Paula's fine. I would like you to please help me with my TV channel, because I'm doing the best I can to give you all the videos. And I just did a podcast called Drones, UFOs, and they are UFOs. Get off the UAPs. We don't need to call them something else so that they become real. They were real. We're real with UFOs with Kenneth Arnold. Why do we? So Kenneth Arnold didn't see a UFO. He saw UAP. So what difference does it make? It's just such a crazy field.
I think my personal feeling is when you change a name like that after 70 odd years of what is going on, somebody just wants to keep something hidden under the carpet, and I don't agree with that.
Well, there's nothing hidden if you do your homework. There's nothing hidden. Colonel Corso worked in the Pentagon. Wendell Stevens and Timothy Good put out a lot of good material. I mean, there's nothing hidden. You have to look at the whistleblowers. Robert Dean. Did you ever meet Robert Dean, who worked in NATO? These are military. A lot of my books are military. I don't do a lot of contactees or anything. But even though I've gone in that direction in Latin America, because they're the ones that are getting the messages. But did anybody ever see the Disclosure Project with Stephen Greer? And all those poor guys, the air traffic controllers, the pilots, that almost had crashes. The citizen hearing where the guy from Uruguay says, they come over to the military field. We don't know if to shoot at them. And I interviewed Milton Torres at the X conference. A poor guy, 1957, over England, was asked to shoot at a UFO. And he had to keep it secret until Stephen Bassett got him over here. And then when I interviewed him, he started to cry in front of me that he had pulled the button, pressed the button, but the missiles didn't hit the UFO. And he's not lying. The guy's crying in front of me. He couldn't talk for so many years. These are brave people. And he's in my books too. He's in all of the above. So the only thing I can do for these guys is to repeat their words at word for word. Not my opinion. I have no opinion except that disclosure has already happened.
Well, thank you. Any further words?
No,
you were all fired up there.
Hello, Paola Harris ufology, and I think it's www. You have to look at the thing. Just press the button, and I just done a podcast on there. Plus, all of these guys, I collected all their videos so you can hear Colonel Corso talk himself, Clifford Stone talk himself, this Latin American guys, they talk themselves. They tell their own story. So thank you, Miles, and thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you. This is a big deal. I mean, this is a lot of work, a lot of hard work. And you're looking fantastic, Paula. You're looking great. You're fighting fit.
Well, I'm going to be 80 in May, and I'm going to do as much as I can do with the time that I have. And
No, that's not sort of the time that I have rubbish crap. I'm going to poo-poo that. I'm wagging my finger poo-pooing that at you right now. I might even keep that in the edit.
No, keep it in the edit, because I want to tell you the bottom line, and I spoke in Japan, is that we have to raise the consciousness of the planet. The agenda is spiritual, and whatever way you want to go, listen to Grant Cameron. It's all about consciousness. That's it. Everything is consciousness. They're here to get our attention, period.
Well, let's give them some attention.
Okay.
Great. Great.